Let's do it.
Introduce you. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Superlative Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Bushi. Every episode, one guest and one founder, investor, operator, or someone who's built or completed at a level most people only read about. It's going to be a nice, sharp conversation about what they're building. So, let's get into it. Vaibhavi, you left a stable CPA career at KPMG and to bet on a new model of venture where the fund's LPs are the product, which is very interesting as a concept, not just the capital. So before we get into your story, just want to say a big thank you for joining the call, and yeah, would love to know in two sentences what is GTM Fund and what are you building right now?
Well, thanks, Edward. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I'm Vaibhavi, principal on the investing side at GTM Fund, and we focus on B2B software, and we do pre-seed and seed. But our value prop, to your point, is go to market, and that's where our resources lie. And I think right now, in a time where AI has, come into play, its distribution
Hmm.
is key. And so we're very lucky to be go to market fund right now.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I'm actually curious to get into the model, but I want to get into your backstory, right? You
Yeah,
you started you grew up in New Jersey. You started your career in accounting in KPMG. What were you what did you notice in those years that had nothing to do with audits? What struck you from your start there to join like venture?
yeah. You know what's funny? It was actually three things running in parallel. So
Mm,
number one was actually healthcare, and it wasn't through work. It was actually a personal story for me, and so I actually ended up paying attention to healthcare systems, how they operate, where the gaps were, preventative care, looking at
mm,
international systems and how we could incorporate some of those into our systems as well. And now I lead our healthcare practice at Go to Market Fund, and it's also a personal passion of mine. So that was one of the items. And then number two was actually watching Payal Kadakia build ClassPass. And I mean, at that time, there was, she was a South Asian woman, 4'11", like me, a dancer. She grew up in a town next to mine in Jersey. And I think that watching her build a story actually from a problem that she personally lived was very interesting. And what struck out to me during that time was that she had this earned insight. And that's actually
mm,
the specific thing that I look for in founders in today. And then number three, I would say, is investing itself. And so,
mm,
during KPMG, obviously, I was analyzing 10Ks, and that was actually one of my favorite parts of that job, to be honest. And I ended up applying that to my own personal financial life. And I think what I loved is not just reading the numbers, but what the numbers, when you look underneath the numbers, what the story was actually telling you. And I loved that crossover. And that
mm.
genuinely was really fun for me. And I do that still today. I still read 10Ks for my own, financial personal journey. And so, yeah, I think during that time, those were the three items that I was looking for outside of audit and KPMG.
Wow. You were talking about how the process of like reading these 10Ks while you were at KPMG was a fun move, but not a fun thing, but like a good exercise for you, right?
Yeah.
But like what in leaving that job is not an obvious move. Like what did you have to give up practically or socially like to make that call when you were getting into ventures? Like how did you like navigate the how did you decide we're like I wanted to go into venture? There's something you see these 10Ks, you see
Yeah.
there's a story underneath, but is what motivated you to like jump into venture?
Yeah, it's actually really funny, right? I think it was multiple things. It was all the items that I just mentioned to you. It was that combination of healthcare. It was watching Pyle. She was honestly the first person that exposed me to the startup ecosystem. And
Mm,
that's how I started dabbling into what the landscape really looked like. And I still loved the financial lens at the same time, but I also loved early stage startups. And so, um, that was, before my MBA, started exploring that avenue, started dabbling into it, seeing what the ecosystem looked like, reading TechCrunch at that time, and looking at what was happening in the VC landscape. And so for me at that time, obviously, I came from KPMG and I came from accounting. And so that's not the obvious path to venture at all. And I knew that I needed the connections. I knew I needed the relationships. And so that's when it was like, hey, I need to go get my MBA. For me, that made sense because I think like during that time, I wanted the access, and the MBA would give me that access in those 2 years to actually build it up. So I took multiple jobs during my MBA. I took, worked for New York Angels and seeing the angel investing side. And then I also worked for a VC fund called Primetime Partners at that time, working on their focus was aging, and healthcare was actually a big component of it. And so that honestly helped me, get into GTMfund. But it was definitely a lot of different sacrifices along the way, and it was not an easy journey to break into venture.
Your journey of like trying to like break into the network and trying to learn the ropes from like getting the MBA to getting the fellowship, so to speak, in these different funds was quite a learning journey for you.
Yeah.
So, like you were talking about companies, and you're talking about founders, and you're looking for a particular insight. I wanted to get into that because you're also saying I find there's a story going on in these 10Ks. So, and you most likely honed a lot of your insight from working with these funds. Do you want to talk about like how you developed your own personal instinct when and approach and practice when you look at companies, and like what have you noticed in the space like today?
Yeah, I think it's multiple things, right? And I think you're asking that question about like what I look for in a founder, right? And I think at the stage that we're at, right, we're looking at pre-seed and seed, and a lot of these folks don't actually have a product. You're not underwriting a business. You're actually underwriting a person's relationship to that problem, right? And so when you're looking at those things, it's very different. And so it kind of goes back to, Pyle Kadakia and that earned insight piece that I was chatting about.
Earned insight.
It's not, yeah, it's not that book knowledge. It's not this well-researched deck, right? But it's something that a founder knows because they lived through it. And they'll say something that just stops you and you're like, wait, how do you know this? Or like something I can't Google, right? And that's signal. But when they're just providing me like generic market observations, it just tells me, hey, they did their homework. But it doesn't necessarily tell me, oh, there is a specific counterintuitive insight that they've been inside the problem long enough that, everyone else is missing. And that is an important key part that really good founders actually are able to capture. And then I think the other aspect is this like quality of obsession. I think passion alone doesn't really move you, right? But plenty of people are passionate, and then once things get hard, they'll abandon it, right? But what I'm really looking for is that specificity of obsession. So can they tell me
specificity of obsession? Nice.
Yeah, okay. And so what I mean by that, right, is like, why this problem? Like, why this market? Like, why now? Is there a moment in time where there was an inflection point or something just clicked? And I think the more personal and precise that story is, that I can trust that staying power behind it, right? But then when founders are just vague about what they're building, it's usually they're more in love with the idea of what they're building, but not really actually solving the problem. And I think that's very different. And then I would say the third thing is the pattern recognition and how they think, right? Not just what they think, but like listening to how they handle uncertainty. So do they acknowledge what they don't know? do they update you in real time when you push back, or are they getting defensive? And so I think the best founders I've met have this like rare combination in a way where they're intensely confident in their vision, but genuinely curious about being wrong in the details. And I think that balance is really hard. And so when they're able to do it, it really makes a difference. And you can tell the difference when there's a founder that have had these three traits and carries them to its T. So
that's crazy because I had a VC from Sidecut Ventures come onto the
yeah.
podcast earlier, and he was talking about how a lot of information on the internet could be researched, right?
Yeah.
So where is the edge? Where is the unknown knowledge, right? It's not on the internet because everybody can research, right?
Exactly.
So you speak to that, and it reminded me about how to get his knowledge. He chose to spend a month with each company before deciding to invest in them. Not like full time, but like checking in with them, like just to get a sense of how they work.
Yeah.
So I can imagine like the process of vetting a company, like, or being very intimate and intense. So it's very interesting that you're thinking around around the same like avenue.
Yeah, and I actually had this happen to me last year. So
Mm,
I got to meet one of my founders. He left Prepared AI, and a week after I met him, and
mm,
he started to build in healthcare. And I got
mm.
to know him for over like the 2 months, and
Yeah.
we ended up preempting his round. But you get to know that person through and through, right? I was talking to him on a regular basis. I was getting coffee chats with him, and
Oh,
I think
sweet.
yeah, and when you do
Yeah.
that, you get to know. And I think in today's day, especially in AI, I've been saying this to a lot
Mm,
of my friends. Knowledge is commoditized in today's day, but relationships are really hard, and the networks that you actually build. And I mean, that's what our premise at GTM Fund is. We've
mm,
built this 300 plus operators, and that network really makes a difference. And the
mm.
resources that we provide make a big difference. And so in today's era where you can you can easily you can easily get knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's what you do with that knowledge is what's going to make a difference.
yeah. That's I would, I think there needs to be better words now, right? Because
Yeah,
in a sense of like, there's knowledge that you could find on the internet, but there's
yeah,
knowledge that you could like that hasn't been recorded yet, that hasn't been published on the internet, but
yeah,
it's still implicit in a community or an industry, right? But you can only discover that by chatting with the folks or the operators there. So one of the things I want to get into is like in our notes from the onboarding call that we had, right? We talked about how go-to-market execution is one of the only, I'm quoting here, is go-to-market execution is now one of the only real competitive advantages a B2B software company can build. It makes me think of SaaS companies operating in the age of AI, right? But then there's another note that seems to contradict it, right? GTM Fund's thesis is distribution is a moat, right? So how is distribution a moat, but like execute market execution is a competitive advantage? How do you square that? Because to me they're two different levels.
yeah. I think so. This is a really good question, and I think it's multiple things, right? It goes back to right now. I think in the old model, a lot of
Yeah.
investors were looking at it from a product lens, right? And I think that time and that era has kind of moved away. And it's a fine balance of execution, but then also having distribution and being creative with your distributions, right?
Mm,
Because right now it's how do you get to the 100 million mark, right? How do you move really fast? And right now everything is about execution, but it's also how do you get to the first customers, right? How do you get to the first million? And how do you
mm,
build trust? How do you build trust within those customers? How do you actually provide value? What gets them excited? Because you want them in the long run. You don't want them to sit there they get to your 1 million, and then your 2 million, they're already churning. That's not execution, right? And so you need to build it all. It honestly goes back to the people relationship that I had mentioned. It's building that trust, and it's getting creative on how you end up having this human element to it. Are you actually listening to your customers? Are you listening to what they need? Are you adapting your features to that? And then that can help you move along, right? And it's trial and error for a bit of the time, but I think in a day where everything is being squeezed, you can nearly building has gone to zero, right? You can build faster than ever. And so speed is there, but you want to be able to do it sustainably and in a very meaningful way, and keep that trust layer with your customers. And that makes a big difference in this execution, but distribution era.
Okay, I actually, as you answered that, I'm like, you're making me think of another podcast, right? This is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the ventures, but he was basically talking about how you're on your point where you're on distribution, right? And you want your on the point of distribution. He talked about how companies need to really, really work with communities, right? So he talked about like these granola bars that were dealing with a certain type of health community, right? Socks that were meant for running clubs, right? That were big in New York City, right? And those were the thinking was it's communities that have a strong identity and can resonate with this product, and it's part of their community, right? And that's how you fight things like churn. It's not just a transaction thing, right? This your answers is in the same vein, very, very, very compelling. And you talked about earlier, you're looking at healthcare companies. The companies that I chatted with, the VC that I chatted with earlier, was consumer products. How do you think that kind of like task needs to be done on a B2B product, or even like a healthcare product?
In the sense of the branding?
In the sense of like building a community of
Yeah.
like the socks needs running clubs.
Yeah,
Right, but
yeah, yeah.
if you're a
How do you
software
build a
company, how?
community? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how Max, I mean, I think Max created, I mean, that's how where GTM Fund kind of stemmed from, right? Is
Mm,
that he, I think in today's day, and we see it, we have so many conversations, you can see it on many podcasts where a lot of LPs will say, like, the funds that succeed right now are the ones that are very niche and have a specific take on it, right? And the way you build community, and the way Max has built his like our community at GTM Fund,
yeah.
it was the 10 plus experience of being at hosting the SaaS annual with Jason Lemkin. He wrote a book called Hacking Sales. He ran his own company, Sales Hacker, which got sold to Outreach. And so from that decade plus, he got these connections. And then he was like, hey, I'm going to go build GTM Fund. And that was where the genesis started, from the community aspect, right? Because that's where that 300 plus operators of CRO, CMOs really came from. And I think, I mean, our fund stems from community. We'll do community dinners. We actually did one in London. We'll do a bunch in SF in New York City, all over the world, because we have a bunch of go-to-market leaders everywhere. But it is those getting, and we will sometimes do certain topics. Like if someone's like, hey, let's do a PLG session, so we'll do a session around product-led growth, and just bring founders that are pertinent to that and relevant to that. And that's how you're also adding value to your founders at the same time, right? And I think community looks very different, and there's different ways to approach it, and everyone has their own niche. But I think in B2B software, it's, well, like distribution is a big component right now, right? And so we thought about distribution even before it was consensus. But this decade plus, he was like, oh, I'm seeing patterns here. I'm seeing distribution being compelling, and so I want to create a community in that category, right? And so that's how we came about. And I think that when you're thinking about communities for B2B software companies, it's, well, like looking at your pain point and what type of value you can bring to those to your audience, right? And that audience is going to obviously vary depending on if you're a founder, if you're a go-to-market leader, if you're a VC, or head of growth or head of engineering. But you're seeing even in New York City, like you're seeing so many communities like originating, and there's a community actually called B2B software in NYC. Funny enough,
Wow.
and I know the one who's organized it, and so you're seeing these pop up, and I think that you can, as long as you're very clever and you have a creative approach to how you're building that community, and you're at the end of the day being authentic. I think people will resonate. I think this goes to brand, just being authentic. It sticks with the customer, it sticks with the founder, it sticks to a VC a bit more. So yeah, I think those are a few ways that you could approach community building.
Yeah, and like I know we chatted about this in our onboarding call, but like,
Yeah.
for the audience listening, and future audiences too, you GTM Ventures is made of a community of founders who are LPs into the fund. Do you want to talk more about the model, just so that we
Yeah.
people get a sense of GTM Fund?
Yeah, so we're a traditional VC fund,
Hmm.
but we have go-to-market leaders, and so they are actually invested in our fund, and they've been invested from like the early days, and so that's where our value prop is. So if you're like, hey, I'm looking for to hire a CRO, we have a bunch of those folks, and we can
Hmm.
help you place them at your portfolio companies, and we've done upwards to, I think, 50 and above, just placing folks within our own network into our portfolio companies. But if you're also like, hey, I'm selling to healthcare systems, can I chat with somebody? Or
Hmm.
I'm doing this enterprise motion, can I chat with somebody? And we'll provide those folks for our portfolio companies to be a resource. And I mean, we've made bunch of intros that have just been very helpful, whether it's, hey, I want advice on my pricing. I don't know what's sticking. I have a few items, right? And we have a
Yeah.
bunch of such folks that can help you with pricing. But if you're like, hey, I don't know if this current distribution strategy is really working. And so that for that
Hmm.
specific problem, we'll find and match you with somebody within our go-to-market network. And they have skin in the game. They're LPs in our fund. And so they have also an incentive for a lot of these founders to win and be successful. And so I think that alignment of incentives is always important. But yeah, so it kind of falls on both categories. It's this group of folks and that's where the community has originated from,
Hmm.
right? And not only are they LPs, but we'll do community dinners where we bring these go-to-market leaders and our founders together, and it's a great place to always knowledge share and see what's happening in the ecosystem. But then also, if you're like looking for your hiring talent, right
Hmm.
there you
Yeah.
go,
You got a pool.
you're in the right circle to find it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. So, I know you from the portfolio that you put together, right? You have a lot of like B2B companies, and that's this we're living in interesting times, right? Where AI right now can be used by businesses themselves to build their own solutions, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm wondering. I'd love to ask you, right? You're since you're part of this huge community of founders who do this kind of stuff, what's the thinking now when it comes to like building products for businesses? Because to me, it feels like you either you have to cut the you change your entire business model and then go niche. That's what it sounds like to me when I chatted with other VCs. Everybody can build their own website, or given enough time,
Yeah.
if they can build their own store, for example. But like, so go niche, pay per pay for output, but like that's just like at the high level. Like, what are do you would you like to talk about that? And maybe my take is wrong.
Yeah, and I think so. Here's the thing. I think the way to approach it is from a first principles lens with
Okay.
everything. And I think that piece, I think right now we talk about it all the time at GTM Fund is there's there's so much consensus thinking happening that
Yeah.
non-consensus has kind of gone out the door a little bit. And it's a lot of folks are building the 2.0 version of tech that already had existed maybe a year or 2 years from now. And
Interesting.
so it's kind of understanding like how do you find the gaps within that space, and niche makes sense, but horizontal also makes sense if you are if it's a new category creation, right? If you're
Okay.
building a horizontal play in an existing market which has already been saturated,
Yeah.
unless you are, and it goes back to those relationships and it goes back to that go to market distribution, unless
Yeah.
you have a very creative distribution channel that none of your competitors have, you could possibly win the horizontal play. But the niche spots have been winning because the fact that, hey, you have an opportunity to eat a big pie of a big piece of that market, as long as that
Yeah.
market, say, is big. And you can also find creative outlets of tapping into the gaps that most people haven't tapped into, or tapping into gaps that other folks, and but that's where a lot of the features are being built. And so you
Mm.
kind of, it's a fine balance of, you don't want to build a feature, you want to build something that can elevate into an end-to-end platform eventually. And
Mm.
so I think that all these, I do see a world where a lot of this stuff gets consolidated,
Yeah.
and you're going to have an end-to-end platform, so it will end up being horizontal, even though
Yeah.
it's just, I think the way, but why folks are moving in the niche category, it's a wedge to get into the door. And then
Yeah.
from there, it allows them to go and do that horizontal play. And so I can't say if it's the right or wrong thing at the moment. I think that the market right now is
It's new
so,
space.
it's, yeah, and it's crowded in each category, right?
Mm.
And it's a there's a lot of noise, and so it's, the wedge makes sense. I think what the advice that I would give to people is being mindful of, are you thinking from a first principles lens? If it's a crowded space, like, are you getting creative with your distribution or your product mode? Or I think even now you need, before you had few moats to stand on, right? I think now you need 4 to 6 like solid foundational moats for your company, that where one moat gets stripped away, you have
Yeah.
moats to stand on. But moats are getting taken away day by day.
Yeah.
And so if you're going niche, that's great. But I would think about, it's not just about your technical mode and your data mode, but what other modes can you create around your business that could be a flywheel that gives you edge against your competitors, is how I would think about it.
Gotcha. So and I get the part of going niche and then trying to find a certain like workflow that you can automate. I get the part where um, eventually with this particular customer, look at all
Yeah.
the workflows and integrate them with a solution that's end to end. That seems to be a very uh, you know shrewd path. So I really appreciate that. But
Yeah.
could you talk about like horizontal? Like, what does to be horizontal mean? And
Yeah.
because it sounds like it's the old way of doing things. Could you expand on that if you don't mind? I'm very new
Yeah.
to this kind of like these terminology.
Yeah. Um, so when I say like, you're meaning like moving into the horizontal path or a
Yeah,
strong,
the
yeah.
horizontal path of just of growing your company and your product and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So say if you're building, I'll take healthcare for an example, right?
Okay.
And say if you're building in dermatology,
Mm.
um, and so you can build into one specialty, right? And we've actually invested in a company that is an operation layer for pediatric care, right? And so if you're doing, say, pediatric care or dermatology, well, then how do you move up market? Like, how do you move to other specialties? Because when you move to the other specialties, right, like if you look at the Epics of the world, many of the healthcare systems, many of the groups exist on Epic or use Epic or Cerner or some of the bigger players, right? I see them as the horizontal folks. But these, if you're starting just for, say, dermatology or pediatric care, that's one niche, and you can win that market. That market in itself is huge, right? But then how do you expand from there, right? Do you move to other specialty groups? Do you move, you're at clinic level, do you move to hospital layer and expand that way? And so when I speak to horizontal, it's, hey, you find this niche in one category, like the specialty group, and then you're moving up market, right? And so that's what I'm saying about that horizontal play, where you're able to kind of gain market share in other categories or other areas.
Adjacent to the
Exactly.
niche you're saying. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
So let's say pediatric care is one kind of clinic or practice, but they seem to have the same issue. For example, I don't know, like I'm just spitballing here, like organizing their client data, for example, or right, or reporting in a clean way to their insurance companies, or filing that, right? Yes, there's a problem in one practice, but there's other practices that feel that same problem. So like serve those different practices. That's what you mean by horizontal.
So I'll give you an example of we actually have one that does charting and billing, right? And he does behavioral health. And so he's gonna have, you can win that market, and you can win all those clinics. So he can go to all these clinics and win in that market. That's one market. But he can also, that same problem exists in dermatology, oncology, pediatrics. So you can move across specialties, and obviously that there is a little bit of a personalization that you'll need for what you're building, but each category is hitting that pain point, right? So that's when you start to eat the piece of the pie when you're moving horizontally.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you for that that clarity. There's lots of clinics, but there's also different categories that have lots of clinics too. So
exactly.
that's really good. That's really good. Thanks for that clarification. So I would love to go back to GTMfund, right? I know would love to know like what you're currently building. I know last time we chatted, you're building up the second fund, and one of the key things that you also help with is helping companies with go to market, where you even do like marketing for them too, because you just lean into the network that you built.
So I would say, so we're actually on our third fund.
Third.
Point. Yeah, we're on a third fund. So we're raising. I know we're the brand is getting out there. We're growing.
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of people. I can walk into a room and people know our brand before I even say anything, and a lot of people think that we're a lot bigger than we are. But
that's good reputation.
We're still a small team, but I mean, the way I would look at it is like, right, we're building the first generational fund for go to market, and I use that word deliberately because it's not about just this fund cycle, right? But it's about what is the next decade of B2B software actually going to look like, and who's going to actually get rewarded. And so, and like AI has compressed the cost of building to nearly zero. Features get copied in weeks, right? We just talked about that. And the product moat and the pricing moat that people had a leg to stand on is dissolving faster than ever, right? And so when that product moat goes away, what's left? Distribution every time, right? And so I think that the companies that define this decade won't just be winning because they built something no one else could build, but they'll win because they reach their buyer first, they earn that trust the fastest, and they build emotion that actually compounded in ways that the competitors couldn't replicate, right? And so, that's our genesis. Like that's, we have obviously, like I mentioned, the 300 plus operators who have skin in the game, the Go to Market Now podcast. And then like you mentioned, the marketing aspect of it, that has been a really great resource for a lot of our portfolio companies. And then the dinners, like none of that is actually marketing in some ways, right? Like that's
it's community building, like rapport building, really, and getting to know each other. It's a fun exercise. Yeah, it's not necessarily business first.
It's infrastructure for distribution. That's what it is, right? And that compounds over time. And so I think the best founders right now aren't like they're raising today. The ones that are raising today aren't asking like who is the biggest brand and most capital. Like yes, it matters, but a lot of founders are now asking who will actually help me get to the first 10 customers. Like, and that's a different question than founders were asking a few years ago. And so as go-to-market fund, like we're structurally built to answer that. And so in a world where we're moving into like the old playbooks are breaking and the questions of how you reach your buyer has never been more urgent, distribution is not a nice to have anymore. It truly is the one thing that lasts in this decade. And I think that the folks that actually focus on that are going to have an edge to win.
Yeah. So, Vaibhavi, I want to like just push back a little bit because I get the point where if you're a B2B company, and I think B2B companies still have a role in the business landscape. A lot of companies are too busy, right, doing their work, that they can't build their own tools. They can't build their own services, for example, right?
Yeah.
They don't have the time to. They can't even like adjust their. They don't have enough time to adjust the policies or this configuration files for their AI.
Yeah.
Right. So you talk about companies just need to create products that help these businesses and reach them very fast. But my thing is, more I push back is, like the incumbents, big companies can already, with lots of funds, can already like build these solutions and attempt to go niche too. So how do you look at a company and say, I believe in them, I think they can win, the incumbent's not gonna go into their territory? How do you build that conviction?
Yeah, I think, okay, so there's multiple things here. It's number one, it's the founder. And it goes back to the points that I'd mentioned earlier about the founder archetype and what they're looking for. And can they hire exceptional talent? I mean, that's one piece, right? Can they attract really good talent? Are they excited about their talent? Because especially at pre-seed and seed, they don't really have anything. So you need to really sell that vision to folks. And if those folks can hire 2 or 3 exceptional folks, that's a game changer, right? And so that's number one. And number two, I think a lot of folks are saying, well, can't OpenAI do this, or can't Anthropic do this?
I hear that all the time.
And yes, so to an extent, yes, you can move, but think about, you and I can make the same thing. But say if you're building a certain category where I don't have those relationships, or I don't know exactly what the product should look like, or I don't know what my customers actually need, it's going to be really hard to, you can build that product, right? But are you actually going to get users to use it is a different conversation, right? And I think that's
churning.
Exactly. And you know what else is happening too? Is a lot of these folks that you see these high numbers, they're all selling to each other too. And that number is getting lost in these big numbers.
Wash trading, in a sense.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I think that the industry sometimes overlooks these little nuances of how some of these founders are also getting smart in the process. But I think that a founder, you also see when a founder has a chip on their shoulder. Like, if there's a founder, for us, we're very founder oriented. And so if you are someone who's going to go walls run through walls for this company, they're going to figure it out. They'll figure a way out. And so I think that, it's easier to build, and sure, the Anthropics and OpenAI, but some of this stuff can't also stand in the court of law, right? You could build a legal tech. But what I mean by that is that there's also, if you have to bring it to court of law, is that going to hold up? Right? Is that tech going to actually hold up? And I think that a lot of people will say no. And I think that's a really hard piece for people to understand. And yes, I can't tell you how many times people are telling me, some of my friends are like, oh, I vibe coded an app. But when I look at that app, I'm like, I don't see any pull towards it. You also have to have, your audience is humans at the end of the day, right? And so you need to have a pull to get them excited about what you're using, what you're building. And you can't, I think people are getting lost in, hey, I'm building a tool, but it really needs to become a part of that, either that company or that consumer at the end of the day. And that piece is really hard to build and embed. And so you can say you could build, have Anthropic come in, but that they're so consumed in building what they want to build in the next aspect of what they want to build, that these little things aren't items that are big. They're not relevant. It's an opportunity cost. It's time that they can spend on something else, right? And it's the same question it's the same conversation people have about, should I internally build this or should I just buy the tooling? Now, I can internally build it, but I'm going to have to spend money on hiring folks. I'm going to I have to reinvent the wheel. And to build something from scratch, when something is going to cost me less money to purchase, why would I not purchase that? Right? I can use that budget for something else. Yeah. So, yeah. No, you're good. You're good. No, you're good. That's my last point.
Yeah. So, like, Vaibhavi, that's very interesting. So you're almost painting the picture where the future B2B companies. Yes, we live in a world where anybody can vibe code an interface or an app, right? Yeah. But the app that will resonate will be the app that is built by someone who comes from that community or resonates or knows really deeply about that community or company, right? Exactly. So that it resonates with the product that's being built.
Exactly.
So, okay, gotcha. And then you're saying it's an opportunity cost for big players like Anthropic or OpenAI. They would need to get someone from this project, right? Or this community to help them develop their own in-house thing. And then they could also just acquire this thing later on in the future. Exactly. Why build it internally?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay. This is very okay. That's very 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 interesting, and actually gives me a lot of hope for a lot of the B2B builders out there. So I appreciate the nuance and the lens that you put together. So Vaibhavi, I want to say, like, this has been a very powerful conversation, at least for me. You
appreciate
carved
it.
a lot. I appreciate you. Like, I love how you helped look at this industry and the lens and the object from different perspectives. So I really really appreciate that. Before we land the plane, so to speak, I know a lot of folks who are on my LinkedIn are builders as well, and if they're building SaaS products, how could they? SaaS products or B2B products. I don't know if SaaS will be the right word in the future, but if they're building
software products,
there we go.
B2B software, AI,
There you go. If they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect with you and their fund?
Yeah, I mean, you can connect me on LinkedIn at Vaibhavi Nesarikar. And then also we have our go-to-market fund page. So you can follow us there on LinkedIn and connect with our whole team. And we'll all be a good resource for you guys. So we're always looking for founders. pre-seed and seed. And I think that there's so much innovation also taking place, even though I was a little bit jaded on certain aspects of, but I think that there's also a lot of movement happening in the ecosystem. So happy to always connect.
There you go. There you go. So, ladies and gentlemen, Vaibhavi from GTMfund, thank you for your insights and sharing your time, spending time with us today. And yeah, hope to have you next time, like when there's more movement with companies and there's new insights that have been discovered in the trenches, so to speak.
Amazing, Edward. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, same here. Same here.